Corregidor because they're worried about a Japanese attack somewhere in the Pacific, and they want to bolster those islands with soldiers in case an attack comes. So I'm going to have to leave, he said, but don't worry, this will all blow over in a matter of weeks. I'll be home soon. Well, that's the end of their little paradise. They have to close up their home. Carrie goes with Wally down to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, where all the big ships were to take these men far, far away. Carrie is on the pier that day with hundreds of other women who are doing the same thing, saying goodbye to their loved ones. And she and Wally say their goodbyes, and Wally gets on the ship, and Carrie stands and waves, and he waves, and then the ship pulls out, and he waves, and she waves. And the ship is more distant. Carrie still stands there waving, thinking maybe he can still see me, maybe. And then she can't even see the ship anymore, and she's sort of waving, and then says, all right, he can't possibly see me anymore. She looks around. She's been there for hours. She is the last woman standing on that pier that day. Everyone else has gone. It was time for her to go home to Illinois, to her parents' home, to wait for Wally. She and her mother are listening to the radio on a Sunday morning when they break in with news that Pearl Harbor, Hawaii has been attacked by the Japanese, and the United States will be at war with Japan. Right after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they attack islands all through the Pacific, including the one Wally is on, Corregidor. Wally is caught in the eye of the storm. He manages to get a telegram off to Carrie. She shared it with me. I'll share it with you. This is what it read. My dearest wife, darling, only enough time for a quick note. Been very busy around here. You'll notice in this telegram he makes no mention of the fact that bombs are falling all around him and his men day and night, 24/7. Don't worry, dear. Don't believe everything you read. Everything's going to be just fine. I've taken out $7,000 more in life insurance, but I won't worry you with that. You won't be needing it because I'm coming home. Take care of Mom and Dad. Be happy, darling. And know that first to last, my thoughts will be of you. Your husband, Wally. Well, with no reinforcements possible, on May 6, 1942, the island of Corregidor fell to the Japanese. Every American on that island was either killed by the Japanese or imprisoned by them. Carrie was in the upstairs bedroom of her family's farm, again, not too far from here, getting dressed one morning when she saw the postman walking up the front steps. It's a sight you did not want to see in World War II, because generally the postman was bringing you a telegram with bad news. Well, sure enough, he had a telegram in his hand. She rushed down the stairs, opened up the door. He stood there. He happened to be a family friend, so he couldn't even speak. Tears were running down his eyes. He handed her the telegram. She opened it. It was short and sweet, as they always are. We regret to inform you that your husband is presumed held as a prisoner of war by the Japanese. No further information is known. Well, at that moment, Carrie knew that she faced years of worrying and waiting, and the thought of being unable to help her husband was more than she could bear. So the next morning, without telling anybody, she went to a train, got on a train, went into Chicago, signed up at the 1st Women's Army Corps Center, and became a WAC. Her reasoning was simple. If she could end this war even 5 minutes sooner by something she would do and get her husband back, it would be worth it. Well, Carrie would be sent to Fort Des Moines for training, and that's where she would serve. While in the war, she kept a wartime journal written to Wally because she wanted to share it with him when he came back. Remember, he had no knowledge of her joining the Women's Army Corps. Her first journal entry is from Fort Des Moines. And she shared her journal with me, and I'm going to share a few of the excerpts from you. Here's the first one. September 17th, 1942. Wally, dear, to you I write this book, as it is so hard to live day after day and not write to you. This is a good time for me to remind you that unlike our own times, there was no email, no cell phones, very few telephones. And if you were a prisoner of war, you did not get to write letters. So once Carrie lost Wally, she lost him. In other words, she had no idea where he was at, nor would she, day after day, week after week. It's been almost a year already, since you left, and my heart still breaks when I think of the happiness we had in Oregon. Did you know, Wally, that the morning we left, I went out the front door after you went out the back, so that I could say one last goodbye to the home that held all my dreams come true. For living with you, dear, was like living the dreams of childhood. You're the finest man I've ever known, and now that I'm in the military, I see that you're one of the finest soldiers. You know, dear, my constant thoughts are of you, praying that what you're going through as a prisoner is not too much hell. If only I could go through it with you. Well, dear, this is to be a record of my Army life, so here goes. After 2 days physical examination, I was sworn in with 33 other girls. My thoughts were with you, hoping you'd be proud of me. Can you imagine me up at 5 a.m.? Oh, it's awful. They force us to march, then we have intelligence tests, drills, more intelligence tests, classes, physical fitness, finally bed at 11 p.m. Well, the life of a WAC was a true military existence. They worked 6 days a week, 52 hours a week. When they first arrived at Fort Des Moines, it really wasn't ready for the women. They still were making new roads, so they were really muddy. They didn't have enough barracks for them, so many of the women were put up in horse stables. They had moved the horses out and put the women in. They also didn't have enough uniforms for the women, so they were given men's uniforms. One of the women I interviewed said it was like these clothes were made for a race of giants. Now, they were made for men. When I asked all the women about these inconveniences, including Carrie, they all said, oh, we just got used to it, it was okay. But there was one thing they never got used to. Almost every one of the women I interviewed mentioned this: the shoes, the Army shoes. They were ugly. Ugly shoes. Now, the World War II generation women, they were used to wearing high heels, really pretty shoes. These were ugly. They were good for marching, and that's what the military wants. In fact, the women in the WAC called these shoes the gruesome twosomes. Carrie mentions them in one of the journal entries to Wally. Dear Wally, October 1942, march, march, march on the parade ground. I sleep in a converted stable, dear, but it's really quite comfortable. I march on new roads with mud up to my ankles, but at least it covers these hideous shoes. All the girls call them the gruesome twosomes because they can make the best pair of legs look like stovepipes. I guess it's good you can't see me. But my uniform finally looks good, after at first being 6 sizes too big. I think you'd be proud of me, Wally. I'm getting to be quite the good soldier. Well, being a good soldier wasn't easy. Any of you who maybe looked into joining the military